Hello, everyone. My name is Domingos Ferreira. I'm Director and Head of Software Engineering at Much Consulting. And I'm here today to talk to you about unit testing. And now we can accelerate unit testing using what we call a minimal Odoo Docker image. Before we start, there's a QR code right here on the right, where you can get the slides, so you don't have to take pictures along the way. You can just scan the QR code. It will ask for an email. I promise you, pinky swear, we will only use it to share this presentation with you, presentation number 5. That's why you need to say the presentation number. If you get spam from this, you can spam me back as usual. On the other side, if you want to ask questions along the way, you don't have to wait until the end. You can also already just scan the QR code ahead of time to save those questions. Good. Starting. Testing is a tricky problem, and I was thinking about this. We've been having a lot of talks on testing also throughout this year's Odoo Expo, and I think it's a little bit the price of freedom. Freedom gives you so many options to do the same thing that I always feel like there's no real standardized, this is the way to do it, and everyone should do it like this because it's correct. So I think we are a little bit all over the place and feeling like we have a lot of pain points. We, in general, developers trying to develop things in Odoo and trying to test and create quality from there. So basically ERP is complex, right? We've been talking today also on the talk about cron jobs and the situation where, you know, if you're committing data, all the discussion with save points and how hard it makes it to handle going back and forth and test things. It's tricky. Most of the tests, also the easiest way to do it, at least are very sequential, take a lot of time, create resource overhead, etc., and so on. So we faced this problem. And the question then became, how can we make testing basically affordable, that it's used day to day, every day, easy, simple, light, that we can integrate it in a workflow, essentially, right? That it can scale. So we started to understand some rules or some ideas, right? Absolute consistency. So it should be zero data pollution. The idea of having a server, creating a new database, testing, eliminating database, restoring stuff, or reusing the database, reusing servers. No, zero data pollution. A server should exist. A server should exist, test, disappear, done. We can do this, we know, right? We should be able to start the server always in the same conditions, always with the same prerequisites. Every run of a test should be identical, should be basically static and reproducible. Should run in seconds for sure. It needs to be fast. If we want to integrate it in a development workflow, in whatever stage it is of the development workflow, it needs to be fast, it needs to be seamless, it needs to be easy and light. It needs to run instantly, it needs to run on demand, and you need to have control over it. And an unconstrained scale, so meaning maybe we're just testing one project, maybe we're testing 10 projects, maybe we are testing one module, maybe we're testing 2, 3. It needs to be configurable, scalable, no such constraints, no infrastructure constraints, no limits of only one user can test at one time, whatever. So essentially the conclusion in the end is we needed something where we can create a server, start a new Odoo, install whatever we need to install, run the tests, report the results, kill the server, done. This is where the idea of this minimal Docker started to take place. But to talk about this, there were a set of principles that we needed to adhere to, right? This isolation. So it needs to comply with this idea of no pollution. Each client has its own server. It's running only for this client. There's no two clients running on same infrastructure. There's no sharing of infrastructure of data, no risk even for that case. Reproducible, as you saw on the challenge before. We can replicate the tests. Every test run every time returns the same error. If we test a test 100 times and one of the tests there's an error because there's actually an error on the code and not that happens once every 100 runs and not the test failed. It is optimized, needs to run fast, needs to run what it needs to run only, and seamless, so as said, we can integrate it in the day-to-day idea. We have the tools for it, right? Docker starts to become a little bit elephant in the room if we're talking about this. It's with Docker, that's why it exists, so we can create a container, use it, dispose of it, have it static, reproducible, etc. And then we can integrate it in the CI pipeline. But if we want to talk about the idea of this Odoo minimal image, I have to talk about the maximal image, right? Because the reference is a normal Odoo server. We run every instance of Odoo, we run it in Docker, with Docker Compose, and so it's standard, reproducible, scalable. Our server, powered with Docker Compose and with Docker, always deploys at least these things in every client. And I'm summarizing. If we really go tool by tool, this would be enormous. But at least Odoo, for sure, a database, for sure, server tools and configuration, obviously, backup setup that sometimes involves 2 or 3 tools, system monitoring tools, and here you have your Loki, Prometheus, etc., all the engines that may have running there. All the network setup, if this has a VPN, needs to have a VPN, etc., all these things. So we needed to trim everything that is not needed. If we're just running tests, we don't need most of the stuff. We need Odoo and we need Postgres. That's it. We don't need server, we can use Odoo shell. We don't need backup. I mean, we're just going to destroy the Docker anyway in a moment. We don't need to monitor it. We need to be able to integrate it in the pipeline, for sure. And we don't need a special network setup. This allowed us to bring what usually would take at least 20 seconds to boot into under 6 seconds, usually. Granted, this depends on which machine you are running it, etc. Tested locally with my laptop. We can debate. But the scale is there, right? The amount of time that it takes to boot an empty Odoo server. And now it's basically then we are ready to deploy this, right? The typical tools, Jenkins, the GitLabs, GitHub, DevOps, etc. But then we needed to go a little bit deeper. I mean, if we're playing with this, if we're doing R&D with this, let's look a little deeper. So we looked at the Docker image itself, and we tried to, optimize it also. So especially from the entry point of Odoo, actually the funny thing is the biggest improvement is usually the image waits for the database, right? With a timeout of 30 seconds. Just removing that gave us already 2 or 3 seconds in a step that would, take 9. So it's a 25% increase or something around that. Well, 3 of 9 is 33, but you get the idea. We just trust that Docker Compose is working. Docker Compose is supposed to handle the dependency between Odoo and the database, so we don't need to really wait for the database to run the tests. It can fail, but we can live without that reliability. This server will live for, a couple of minutes. So we simplified the configuration. And those are basically the easy things to do. The smarter ones were a little bit harder to get there. So we thought about it, and counterintuitively, if the image of Odoo, in Docker image of Odoo, is actually bigger, even though we call it minimal, it's better. What we did is we pre-install some apt packages that we know it will depend on, that we know will accelerate, that usually are installed on boot anyway, and this way we don't need to install it. It's faster, they are there. Sure, we may have to keep track of versions, but it's an easy maintenance to do. We know precisely what this image will do, right? We know which packages it needs. And then dependency management. So because we will, and we will see it a little bit later, we want this server to boot and install only the modules that were changed in a given pull request, in a given set of code that is being handled. Then we can install only the requirements for these modules, and skipping all the other Python packages that maybe are in this project, in other modules that we are not testing right now. And this way we can also save a lot of seconds in just installing what really needs to be installed. Yeah, so to this point, we really wanted to run in the CI pipeline, but then again, we don't want that it's a big project, we are just changing something in a jar. We don't want HR employee, we don't want it to run, all the timesheet tests, all the everything. It will just take too much time. Because here we are talking about unit tests, or what is close to unit tests in the Odoo world, right? We were talking about fast tests, and not really the integration tests that you would have, big sets of data being processed from beginning to end in a workflow. You change something and you are testing that unit very fast. So we want to detect changes. With git diff, we can basically see which modules we are changing in the code. That's great. And we put that in parallel with using tags for tests, which we categorize as unit or fast, in this way that we know are the tests that need to run in this stage very fast in the pipeline. They are not the full coverage of tests. We're just testing what was changed in this commit. It's the purpose of these tests. Full coverage is something else. Okay. Then pass these module names, call Docker compose, using this with as parameters. That will then use the Odoo minimal image that we talked about, and we use the names of these modules so it knows what to install, it knows which dependencies to install, and then basically our setup is running. If needed, it's not needed that much, to be honest, especially at this stage. We can run it in parallel. You have more than one module, you can basically decide, do I want to just start an Odoo, a Docker compose, Odoo where I'm testing all these modules and running all these tests? Do I want to start server per module sequentially? Do I want to start in parallel? Then it's a little bit configuration. Honestly, mostly it just runs in serial. There's not that many pull requests that all of a sudden touch 10 different modules that you need to care about. And that's it. So there's 3 takeaways that I want you guys to take today from this talk. There's a mindset shift that we had to go through in trying to find a way that we can actually lower the entry level for how tests are done, for how tests need to be done, so that tests get done and get inserted into our pipeline. The technical solution, so we went for this approach where we saw Docker, we're already using everything with Docker. If we can minimize the footprint of this Docker image, we can use it as plug and play for a lot of solutions. Because I'm talking here today about testing and inserting testing as the unit test stage on a pipeline. But then we can run, anonymization of databases. You don't need a full server. You can also just spin a new Docker, minimal one, get the database, restore that database, run whatever scripts you need to run to anonymize the database, download the result, kill that server, you don't need it anymore. There are multiple usages for such an image like this. And the business impact, because ultimately reducing the footprint, the entry point, and the overhead that it brings, that was there for creating tests and running tests, just made it that the test adoption and the ease to adopt, and also even the impact on the development time just went down completely, and made it so that tests are now just absolutely normal part of the software development lifecycle. And that's it from my side. Thank you so much. You can ask questions here, and we can talk about it. You can also get the slides again, another last chance, if you need them. Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you so much.
So questions are popping now. Are you using the official Odoo Docker images, or do you have a custom images?
No, this is exactly the idea. This is a custom image. We used the official image as a base, and we changed it to tailor it to this specific need. For other purposes, we do use the Odoo official Docker image, but for this specific purpose, it was altered, especially on this question of the entry point, where we removed the wait for the database, we changed how the dependencies are installed, so they are installed only on demand. We changed how modules are installed, so only dependencies or the modules that we want to test are installed. This type of tweaks were done. So we basically altered the stock Docker image.
Thank you. Do you ever run Odoo standard tests to make sure you're not breaking the standard functionalities?
Yeah, that's a tricky part. Here, at this stage, for sure, we don't run, right? Because honestly, customization a lot of times will break standard functionality, right? But when you run the tests, you can always run minus standard, and the standard Odoo tests will not be run, so you will ignore them. This is what we want to do at this stage, because we want to test only the modules that were configured and that are custom, right? Keep in mind that customization is really changing the standard behaviors. Not always, I mean, also adding, but sometimes it's really changing. So most likely you will break standard tests. That is part of the process. On a later stage, when you want to run all the tests, to be honest, we don't test standard, and I don't think that's needed. I mean, it's tested by Odoo, right? It's there, the tests passed for it to be released. We don't add tests to the standard. They are not our tests, they are Odoo tests.
Okay, so you partially answer to the next question. So not what is technically included in the unit test on the Odoo core module, or also custom code?
Yeah.
Is it only possible for modules with test case inside the code?
Can you repeat? Sorry, I didn't understand.
Is it only possible for module with test case inside the code? Yeah, maybe the missing.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to write the test. So the only thing that you run is the modules that implement the tests, and you run them. The only thing here is if you are changing them, which is what happens a lot. This is most of the cases that we get at this stage, that get caught at this stage, is you're modifying further a module that is already customized by you, and you are causing a regression because you break something that was customized before. And that's a good point, because then you have to either evolve the tests for the new reality or go back and fix your implementation so it doesn't break the original customization.
Where can we find this minimal image?
This is ours at Much internally, but you can also catch me here. I'm happy to share the solution with you. It's not a big deal.
Do you use Docker Compose for all parts of the production hosting environment, including backups and monitoring?
Yes, I'm thinking to see if I don't. Yes, everything is in container. Everything is in container and is deployed as pieces of the Lego that make all the servers, production and staging.
How do we know? Do you know which modules needs test runs in the CI, as it can also have impact on other modules?
Yeah, so that is actually a good question, a great question, because if the dependencies are right in the module, you can get it, because in the end it will also test those dependencies. But you have to do a git diff, and you can go through the diff in the code, get which models were changed. I'm happy also, if you reach me, I'm happy to share the command with you that does this, that gets you the list of modules that are being changed at any commit or pull request. And from there, yeah, then you know which modules are being changed. If the dependencies on those modules are correct, you're good to go. But the truth is, a lot of times things work and the dependencies are not right. Right? So that's why base upgrade should always run.
Yeah, there is a follow-up question here, but the point of running the standard test is that your custom code may break something you didn't think about, so you don't care about such a situation.
It is a good point, but to be honest, yeah, it is a good. I see where it comes from. It's a good point, but I assume that you are customizing, and your tests are based on the workflows that you are implementing. So those are the ones you care about the most, right? It's a good point. You could still go and break some standard functionality. Maybe I have to rethink my approach, but in this case, yeah. It's a good point. It's actually a very good point.
There are a question coming, but not finished yet. So waiting 2 minutes. I think it would be the last one now. But yeah, just a question about, okay, you run all the tests at some point, right?
Yeah, at some point you run all the tests. And going back to the standard, I think it's also a little bit which tax are you willing to pay, right? Because you can have customers that literally want to, remove the, I don't know, it's now weird to give an example, but the create invoice or post an invoice workflow. Maybe they just don't want to use that and still have the module installed, right? There are possibilities. So True, adding that capacity when you can double check that you didn't affect some other workflow that comes from standard will be useful, but most of the times you will break them. So most of the time you will have, orange builds all the time.
Okay, that was the last question. So where can we find you now?
Yes, you can get in touch with us. We are at All 10, right in the entrance, booth C1. We have great coffee. You should definitely go by. And I will be here still a little bit today, so you can also catch me and talk here if you want. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.